السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. So carrying on with the theme of the 313 companions at the Battle of Badr. There was only, there's many companions obviously I would have liked to talk about. But this is the companion that I was named after. So I've basically been waiting all my life to give this talk. So that Sahabi is Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas. And you know, as a child growing up, I was always interested in as to why my parents named me Waqqas. And this is one of the reasons why the Prophet ﷺ said that you should name your children with good names. Names of the prophets, names of the companions, and it in your heart or in the child's heart, it will encourage them to be like them. Perhaps they'll grow an interest in that particular personality. So this companion is one of the companions that was promised Jannah. The Prophet ﷺ, he gave the glad tidings, the good news to these 10 companions that they will enter Jannah, and Sa'd ibn Waqqas was one of them, so known as the Ashra Mubashar. So he was one of the 10. He belonged to a tribe of Zuhra, and he was related to the Prophet ﷺ. So his grandfather was the brother of the maternal grandfather of the Prophet ﷺ. So the Prophet very happily used to say that this is my uncle. So he used to introduce Sa'd bin Waqqas to the other companions. He would say, "This is my uncle." He was very happy and very proud of that fact because he knew about the greatness about this man. He was about 20 years younger than the Prophet ﷺ. So when we say he was his maternal uncle, we don't mean uncle as in being older. We mean as in from lineage. And he was an expert in archery. That was his thing. That was his skill. He used to spend his time in making bows and arrows, and he became an expert at archery. And his physical appearance was that he had long hair. He had well endowed hands. He was very strong. He had a dream before he embraced Islam. So he embraced Islam before the age of 20. And he had a dream where he was in a dark room, in a dark place, but then he saw the moon. And then he followed this moon and he came outside. And then when he came outside, he found 3 other companions there, Zayd ibn Harith, Ali ibn Talib, and Abu Bakr. And then he says to them, that when did you reach this place? And they said, oh, just now. And then when he woke up in the morning, he embraced Islam, and he is known to be perhaps the 7th person to have embraced Islam. And he was only a teenager. So it goes to show, even at that age, the understanding and the intellect that he had to understand the truth. And I think half of the companions out of the 10 were teenagers when they accepted Islam. So as many new Muslims would experience, they have a lot of difficulties when they first embrace Islam. And he had some difficulties, some boundaries to come across with his mother. So his mother, she chastised him. She was angry at him. There was a lot of rage, and she basically gave him a guilt trip. And she said to him, "I'm not going to eat. I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to comb my hair. I'm going to sit outside," and really kind of cause him, this sort of emotional and psychological harm. There's one thing being physically beaten up, but then another thing is this kind of emotional guilt that a parent can do. So it's very, very difficult on the nafs. However, he was resolute. He was strong in his iman. in his loyalty and in his love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and for the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he said to his mother, look, this is just not going to happen. I'm going to carry on, in this path. And then eventually she gave up as she saw, the passion that he had. And here we learn something, it's a lesson that even if somebody does harm to you, that we still treat them in kindness. He wasn't rude to her. He didn't, say any bad words to her. He simply said, look, my love for the Prophet ﷺ and my love for Allah is greater, and this is the path that I have chosen. So he used kind words, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Luqman says this, that if your parents ask you to commit shirk, to associate partners, then that you cannot obey them in this. But when you disobey them in this act, you do it in kindness. So you say kind words to them, you still treat them well. He's known to be the first in a couple of things. He was the first to strike in the name of Islam. So there were some Muslims who were praying, and then somebody was about to attack them, and he was the first one to strike them. And he was the first to shoot an arrow in the name of Islam. At the Battle of Badr, his younger brother, Umayr bin Waqqas, he was very young at the time. He had embraced Islam, and he pleaded with the Prophet ﷺ to let him come to the battle. And he was one of the martyrs of Badr. And in Badr, there's only, I think, 12 to 15 of the companions that were shaheed, and he was one of them. Sa'd ibn Waqqas, he participated in many of the famous battles. He was there with the Prophet ﷺ, on his side. In the Battle of Uhud, he was the one archer that didn't flee. So there was a commotion with some of the companions, and some of them left, and then the Muslims were attacked. But he stood by the instruction of the Prophet ﷺ. So imagine the scene where you've got the enemies of Islam with swords and firing arrows towards the Prophet ﷺ, and he was there by his side protecting him. And there were other companions who were protecting the Prophet ﷺ, with their body, with their swords. And Sa'd ibn Waqqas would be so good at his archery, so precise and so strong and so powerful, that he would pick up the arrow, shoot, pick up the arrow, shoot. And even the Prophet ﷺ would, pick up the arrows, and he would pass it on to him so that he can shoot at the enemies. And anyone who's done archery would vouch that it's so difficult. After firing maybe 3, 4, 5, it's really hard, and your arm starts to ache. And and it is said that in one of the battles he fired 1,000 arrows. 1,000 arrows is something really sort of incredible. But that was his strength. That was his skill. His bravery was to be witnessed by many in all of these battles. The Prophet ﷺ loved him so much that he said that may my mother and my father be sacrificed for you. And the companion said that the Prophet ﷺ didn't say this about any other companion apart from Sa'd bin Waqqas. That's how much love he had for him. The Prophet ﷺ asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to respond to Sa'd bin Waqqas' dua, so to make his dua mustajab. So every time he would make dua, it would be accepted. And this is why when we have pious people or the awliya, we should be very careful in terms of what we say to them. You shouldn't go against them. You shouldn't say things against them, because their dua is accepted. And there was an an incident when someone was speaking ill of the companions, and he told them to stop, and the man just carried on, and then he made dua, and his dua was accepted, and then throughout the entire life, this man who was cursing, he had a wretched life. He had a wretched life because Sa'ad bin Waqqas's dua was mustajab. It was accepted. He went on to become a governor. He went on to conquer many cities. He had great leadership. He had an incident when he was very ill, and the Prophet ﷺ, he passed his hand over his chest and his stomach, and he was cured. But we also find that there is a ruling, a fiqh ruling that came out of this incident where, because he was ill, he thought he was going to pass away. He was wealthy, and he said to the Prophet, "Can I give all of my wealth to charity?" And the Prophet said, "No." He then said, "Can I give half?" And the Prophet said, "No, you have to leave something for your family." And in the end, he said, "Well, can I give 1/3?" And as we know, this is a ruling in Islam that your inheritance, 1/3 can be given to charity, but you must leave something for your family. He's also the last companion to die out of the 10 Mubashirin. And he really was an architect in spreading Islam through the Persian Empire. He was part of the council. He could have been the next Khalifa, but he's someone who ran away from that towards the end of his life when there was a lot of fitan. He ran away from that, and he spent his time, just as a simple shepherd. He didn't want any fame. Didn't want to be a part of anything. He didn't want to be part of the fitna that was going on amongst the Muslims, and kept himself to himself. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from these noble companions. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us learn from these great people, and give us taqwa and strength like these noble companions. And we ask Allah that we join them in Jannah with them together. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.